Some audience members are really excited too, I see. So I'd like to welcome the Kentucky Cannabis Freedom Coalition to come up and start the event. Thanks.
How y'all doing? Y'all doing okay tonight? I want to say thank you for everyone who's come out. I'm just going to say a little bit of a brief statement about the Kentucky Cannabis Freedom Coalition. We were founded in September of 2014. In under a year and a half time, we've managed to get 12,000 followers trying to support the legalization of cannabis in the state of Kentucky. Right? Myself and Tony Ashley, which is over here, actually organized this. Right? And we want to say thank you to Senator Perry Clark for producing this bill, right, and getting this for the state of Kentucky, which we need. Right? With that said, all right, I would like to introduce you to Tom Rector. He's going to give you a little bit of a presentation on the law.
You guys doing all right? Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me without the mic? Yes. My name's Tom Rector. I'm a spokesman for the Kentucky Cannabis Freedom Coalition, and I just wanted to say thank you all for coming out. I want to say thanks to U of L, again to Senator Perry Clark for sponsoring our bill, and to all the nice people that have helped us put on this presentation. I'm really excited to speak to you all tonight because cannabis is a unique thing. It's a unique plant. It has special properties, and the criminalization of cannabis was a mistake. And that's really why we're here tonight, is to correct a mistake that our government made. When I say cannabis is unique, it's because we all have the endocannabinoid system. Our bodies actually produce chemicals very similar to the chemicals found in the marijuana plant. And because our body has similar chemicals to the marijuana plant, it's one of the reasons why it's impossible to fatally overdose on marijuana. God knows I've tried. But, no. So clearly the plant is misclassified. And if you take anything from this seminar tonight, or meeting tonight, it's actually one thing I hope you'll take with you, is that cannabis is amazingly non-toxic. Nearly everything in the supermarket, all over-the-counter drugs, all prescription drugs, all forms of alcohol, all forms of nicotine and caffeine are all more toxic, far more toxic than the marijuana plant. So once again, we're trying to correct a mistake. And what happened with the endocannabinoid system, we didn't discover that we actually had an endocannabinoid system until 1991, when the government found the CB receptor. And cannabis works on a different set of receptors in the body than all other drugs. All other drugs work on dopamine receptors. Cannabis works on CB receptors. And the problem is, we didn't make that discovery in 1991, but all the laws against marijuana or against cannabis started in 1937, and then in the early 1970s with the war on drugs. Before we get into the parts of the bill, I'd first like to talk to you a little bit about the history of criminalization. In 1906, we had the Pure Food and Drug Act that required labeling, because prior to that we had a lot of magical elixirs that people were selling in the country, and this was the precursor to the FDA. In 1936, we produced a film called Reefer Madness. You guys might have been watching some of it before the show started here tonight. And it was a propaganda film to try to scare the country about the dangers of marijuana. And in 1937, the Congress passed the Marijuana Tax Stamp Act. What the Tax Stamp Act did is basically put such a high tax on anybody that had possession of marijuana that it basically put everyone out of business. In 1937, the American Medical Association testified against passage of the Tax Stamp Act because they said cannabis and cannabis extracts were some of the best medicines that they had available. In 1944, the LaGuardia Report, there were a lot of people who were using marijuana in New York City. So LaGuardia was the mayor of New York City, and he formed a commission, and they went out and studied marijuana fairly thoroughly. And they found that marijuana did not induce violence, insanity, or cause any type of crime or lead to other forms of addiction. Then in 1972, we had the Schaefer Commission Schaefer Commission was formed under President Nixon. It was because we had a lot of soldiers who went to Vietnam and they got involved in drugs, marijuana, heroin, and other drugs. So they formed this national commission, the Schaefer Commission, named after Raymond P. Schaefer, governor of Pennsylvania. And the Schaefer Commission determined that marijuana was not dangerous enough to have criminal penalties, and they recommended no criminal penalties. The other thing the Schaefer Commission did, and these are actual excerpts from that commission report, they looked at progression to other drugs for the gateway theory. And what they found is alcohol and tobacco were the drugs that were associated with all other drug use, and that the overwhelming number of people who use marijuana do not progress to harder drugs. Now, we actually have a higher rate of people progressing to harder drugs now, but not because of marijuana, but because of other programs that the government's put in place. The other thing the Schaefer Commission recommended was to do medical research on the plant. They had lots of different doctors. There's over 100 people involved in the commission. They met for over a year. There were senators, there were congressmen on the commission. And they had all kinds of different recommendations medically for epilepsy. As you all know, childhood epilepsy can be treated with it, and other things. But the four big ones that they decided to put in the report were glaucoma, migraine, alcoholism, and cancer research. Alcoholism is synonymous with addiction. So in 1972, the experts in our country recommended that cannabis can be used to treat addiction. And instead of listening to this report, what we did instead is we criminalized cannabis. Then we started eradicating cannabis plants. And we started drug testing everything. And what that caused, it caused alcohol to have sole status, which is the real gateway drug. Gave it monopoly status as the only recreational choice. And it denied access to marijuana that millions of people could have used to treat their addiction. Then there was a Paris movement against marijuana in the 1970s, like there. And then in 1986, under the Reagan administration, they came up with the Anti-Drug Abuse Act, which came up with mandatory minimum sentencing, 3-strike laws, and all these other methods, including drug testing. They raised the federal penalties for marijuana possession, and we ended up with what I call incarceration nation. Kentucky's incarceration rate is the 7th highest in both the U.S. and the world. Because the U.S. leads the world in incarceration. Kentucky's female incarceration rate is the 3rd highest in the world and the U.S. The fatal overdose rate in Kentucky is not just the 3rd highest in the U.S., it's the 3rd highest in the world. Because the U.S. leads in overdose fatalities by a long way. Our overdose rate, fatal overdose rate, is 7 times to 8 times higher than Europe's. Europe has all the same drugs. They just don't drug test. Anyway, the racial disparity in Kentucky on arrests, and this is particularly for marijuana, is 6-to-1 in the state of Kentucky, 3-to-1 in the city of Louisville. So if you're a minority, you're 6 times more likely to get arrested for a marijuana charge, 3 times more likely in Louisville. So I want to ask you guys a question. Who's going to benefit the most from the passage of the Cannabis Freedom Bill? Minority communities, because they're the ones that suffer the brunt of the damage of the drug. It's also probably where the facilities will be located. The shops will be located. Now, cannabis today is a Schedule I drug by the DEA. And what that means is that it has no accepted medical use and it has a high potential for abuse. Now we know that cannabis has numerous medical uses, so it's clearly misscheduled. Okay? Now, how many people in here know what the 14th Amendment says? Anybody? 14th Amendment. Exactly. The 14th Amendment was ratified in 1868, was right after the Civil War. It granted citizenship to all natural-born citizens. And it also created a concept called equal protection under the law, where everyone is supposed to be treated equally by our government. Now, has anybody in here ever heard of this man here, Irvin Roosevelt? Several people have, and others some activists here who know who he is. Irvin Roosevelt gets 300 marijuana cigarettes from the U.S. government. He has since 1982 under under the investigational new drug program, he could legally, well, not in here because he's compared to smoking ordinance, but he could go outside and smoke marijuana right out front, and they couldn't touch it. Now, do you think that that's fair? That Urban Rosenfeld and 13 other people who were in this investigation of new drug program, that they can use access to marijuana and they actually get their marijuana from the government? Do you think that's equal protection under the law where you would be arrested? No. This is how broken your government really is. And of course, the DEA includes marijuana, heroin, LSD, and ecstasy. We all know what's killing people in the U.S. Heroin and opiate, right? Marijuana is often with alcohol and tobacco, but as we said before, it produces cannabinoids that provide relief for pain, nausea, and inflammation. And those cannabinoid compounds are similar to what we already have in our body. We all have an endocannabinoid system. That system maintains health. Now, there was a recent study, actually there's several studies on diabetes and the effects marijuana has on diabetes. And what they found is that regular cannabis consumers have better insulin fasting resistance. They have smaller waistlines by about 1.5 inches on average. And they have better insulin fasting time. It's the time that you can go between meals. So actually, consumption of marijuana may just be healthy completely, and it can be eaten. It doesn't have to be smoked. These figures are from 2010. They're the last data that's available. These are from Kentucky. 6,540 people were arrested in regards to marijuana. It doesn't sound like a whole lot, but if you were one of them, it would be a lot. 31.8% of those arrests were for marijuana. Kentucky spent almost $20 million incarcerating people for marijuana charges. So if we pass the Cannabis Freedom Act, we'll save right off the top almost $20 million. Now, 7% of all Americans have been smoking cannabis regularly. That's a Gallup poll. It's probably considerably higher than that, considering what's going on in the country with all the clamor going on. But even at 7%, that's 300,000 people in Kentucky that use cannabis on a daily basis. We could be saving a lot of money, we could be generating a lot of money, and creating a lot of jobs. The Cannabis Freedom Act legalizes possession of up to an ounce of marijuana on your person. So if you go to the cannabis shop and get your marijuana and you're headed home, police stop you, they can't confiscate it. As long as you only have an ounce or less, you're good. It's actually in your home, because you can cultivate up to 5 cannabis plants based on our law, or our bill. Then you can actually have more marijuana than that at home, more cannabis at home. It also allows an exemption for people that have a medical condition, for those under 21, with the doctor's recommendation. The bill creates the Department of Alcohol, Beverage, and Cannabis Control. And what that board will do, similar to what the Alcohol Beverage Control Board does, it will oversee the licensing of facilities. And the way the bill's written, you have 4 different stages. You can be a cultivator, a processor, a tester, or you can have a retail cannabis facility. Now, the bill sets a $100 application to find out if you qualify for the license. So it only costs you $100 and an application to find out if you qualify. The actual license fee is $5,000, and it's annual and it's renewable, just like a liquor license. The reason we have it set up into 4 different tiers like this, it prevents what's called vertical integration, prevents the business or the industry from being monopolized. Under current law in Kentucky, possession of any amount of marijuana, $250 fine and up to 45 days in jail. If someone catches you with some marijuana, you're probably not going to spend 45 days in jail. It costs $68 a day to put someone in jail and keep them. So you probably just get stuck with a fine. Under the Cannabis Freedom Act, no penalty. You can see the change in cultivation as well. The Cannabis Freedom Act also places an excise tax of $30 on flowers, which are buds, and $10 on the rest of the plant. Because as we all know, the whole rest of the plant can be processed and made into edibles and different cannabis products. So, Cannabis Freedom Act also creates a responsible use fund. And they did a similar thing in Colorado, where they take the tax money and they divide it up. And 50% of the money that we're supposed to collect, assuming we get the bill passed as written, would go to education. The other 50% goes to drug treatment and to law enforcement and the general fund. 50% is a lot. Here's the results from Colorado. First year they did $699 million in sales, nearly $700 million. Last year they did nearly $1 billion in sales. The industry overall in the United States did $5.4 billion in sales, including medical in California and the other states that have medical. And that is ahead of the projections that people had a few years ago. 5.4 million population in Colorado. They did $1 billion. They collected $135 million in taxes. 35 million of that went to schools. 21,000 jobs in the area. Now for Kentucky has 4.3 million people. If 7% of the consumers use cannabis, that's 300,000 consumers. If those consumers spend roughly $1,500 a year, you're going to end up with $500 million in sales, $50 million in taxes based on the way we have the bill set. And 20% of that, 50% of that 50 million, 25 million would go to schools. 20% of that would go to higher education. So if we collected $10 million in taxes for post-secondary education, and there's 100,000 students in post-secondary college in Kentucky, then your tuition would be lowered by about $100 a year, assuming we could put it all into lower tuition. Of course, the government will probably chop that up something. Anyway, it should create 10,000 jobs. Because if you go back and you look at this figure here, in order for Colorado to do $1 billion, they had to have 21,000 people. They couldn't produce the product without it. So for Kentucky to produce 500 million in sales, we'd have to have roughly 10,000 jobs. And they're good paying jobs, at least the ones in Colorado, from what I hear. So in summary, marijuana is a Schedule I drug. It's grouped with heroin and LSD. It's obviously misclassified. It obviously has medical benefits. Unlike alcohol and tobacco, cannabis produces cannabinoids. Our body has cannabinoids inside of it. So it's not a foreign substance that you're introducing to your body. The Cannabis Freedom Act would decriminalize marijuana for persons over 21. And it would produce a whole lot of revenue for the state and a whole lot of jobs. Now, we are legalizekentucky.com. There's where you can go to find out more information. If you want to read a copy of the bill, it's available at legalizekentucky.com. You can also go to lrc.ky.gov to find out any information on any bills in the state. And you can like us on Facebook. And I thank you for your time. Senator Perry Clark, who we thank for writing the bill and putting it up, is next. So, Senator, it's all you.
Thank you very much. Probably won't be Mike Love. You know, I watched the talk show program before I came over here, and they had Michael Phelps on there, and I thought, what a loser stoner. What a slug head, doesn't do anything. That made me think Carl Sagan, how much IQ you lose when you smoke marijuana. She wasn't taking cannabis. Yeah, you know, I'm going to be all over the place, because a lot of times when I stand up and speak, they'll take a lot of your speech. The first people, what's going on in Colorado. We looked at what was going on in Colorado. You know, not only did they make $135 million in taxes, they saved over $60 million in the criminal justice system by unburdening the court system with marijuana. They were reduced. We can't quite get the numbers exactly. This is a little hot mic. The numbers exactly, somewhere between 80 and 95% for simple arrest Colorado stopped doing. So in the court system, you did not have, mainly as a secondary offense. You were caught doing something else, and were speeding, you had a headlight out, you had a doobie in the air or something, and they were doing those arrests. But what happens then is not just that issue. What happens is now you get Child Protective Services involved. I had a preacher come and see me just a few weeks ago, a man from West Louisville, African-American man, got 3 beautiful children, his wife, showed me pictures of them. I was straight on Facebook, so I see a lot of them. He said, I never thought I'd be saying this, a Baptist preacher. He said, I never thought I'd be saying this. He said, my life has migraine headaches. We have been everywhere in the United States. We have been to every single doctor. We have been to every single clinic. We have tried all the FDA approved. We have tried the off non-FDA approved. My wife lays on the couch like 5 days out of 7 is unfunctioning. He said, the doctor recommended just try some cannabis and see if that helps. We got some cannabis, and my wife has a quality of life. She still has the headaches, but she can still spend the day with the children. She doesn't lay on the couch comatose and pharmaceuticals that they pile into her body. And he has a quality of life. You know his greatest fear is that someone will rat around, that someone will be caught, and they will take the beautiful children from that family. That is criminal. The prohibition of cannabis from the beginning, the lies, the distortion, the fear, the fake numbers, the fake that the government, corporations colluded with. You know what Harry Anslinger says how we had to get rid of marijuana? Those African Negro blacks, I think you probably call them Negroes, they get that Negroes, Filipinos, Latinos think they're as good as white guys. And in 1937, that was the argument, and we're still fighting that battle. Tom explained to me the racial aspects that we're dealing with when we're talking about the cannabis plant and the arrest, and that's unfathomable in a country like ours where there's supposed to be a justice in an even scale. It doesn't happen. It needs to change. Prohibition has always been the crime, and you will hear so many falsehoods about that. And you know, it's difficult to get over 90 years of collusion between the government and the corporations and propaganda concerning the benevolent cannabis plant. We were told from the very beginning that Harry Anslinger actually consulted about 30 medical doctors at the time, in 1937s now, when they were talking about sweeping away the cannabis plant for lots of reasons. They were talking about 29 out of those 30 doctors said no. Cannabis is good, effectual medicine. We use it for thousands of modalities. Please don't touch it. One doctor out of 30 was against it. He took all that man's data. And when you have the power of the media and the government provides it, which is not good, and they actually just, and that's why a lot of leaders, that's why a lot of young people don't trust a lot of what's going on in the government, because basically we've been lied to. We've done so many fabrications our entire life and stuff. And one of the biggest ones is the cannabis plant. So we have to stop that. The world's not going to collapse. The world's not going to go into chaos. In Colorado, when they went with full responsible adult use, there of course were all the detractors and said how bad it was going to be. It was going to destroy society and stuff. And what we found by looking at the data now is everything got better. Everything got better. The arrests were down. The crime was down. Actually, the drug usage among younger people is down. When you preclude someone from using something, it's natural rebellion in us to want to do that. Since I was a child, and probably a lot of you don't do that very, don't go there very, don't wear it. They used to tell me what to do. But we are that way. We're naturally that way. So even youth guys, you hear these things. And then we talked about that. We talked about the gateway drug theory. Well, that's one of those childish arguments. It really is. It was actually discarded in the 1960s, about the time it came out. It was discarded, but it's a myth that will not die. It is not the gateway theory. Tobacco and alcohol are the gateways. But the real gateways, not the cannabis, it is not that. If you look at something called adverse childhood experiences, you'll find that the people who are junkies are doing a much harder job. Have multiples of really some strange things in their life: sexual abuse, physical abuse, mental abuse, food insecurity, home insecurity, tragic divorce of the family, death of a parent young. So you should be getting 4 and 5 of these instances in your life. I'm surprised we don't have more street drug addicts and stuff. This is what we're really dealing with. cannabis is a gateway to get people off this. We know, in the Journal of American Medical Association, they stated in a really recent article, we know that in the 23 states that have medicinal marijuana, that you have a minimum of 25% reduction in opiate overdose deaths. That's amazing. That's a lot of Kentucky. You'd be saving more than almost, I don't know, probably even saving hundreds of people. Because in northern Kentucky, that's where that's what's going on. I read an article that said 84 people have died of heroin overdoses in northern Kentucky this year alone. That's a lot of people. We know that cannabis says that wherever you go with adult responsible use and decriminalize the use of cannabis, they're experiencing the high 30s right now. So you're saving thirds of people from opiate addictions, and I think as we advance that, and as you liberalize cannabis laws, you will see that Portugal in the year 2000, anybody know the story of Portugal? What happened in the year 2000? Portugal, everybody knows the story. Portugal, year 2000. Portugal, conservative, Catholic nation, Christian nation, had one of the worst drug problems in Europe. Probably making that hemisphere. That's one of the worst drugs. And things, Portugal did the same things that we do. You know, let's make it, it's illegal, so let's make it more illegal. Let's make more laws about it being illegal. Let's make harsher penalties. Let's make longer serve. So Portugal did all that. Unlike us, they really kind of crashed their criminal justice system budgets. So in the year 2000, Portugal decided that the correct thing to do would be to decriminalize all drugs. I just said all drugs. They decriminalized all drugs. In 10 years, because it's counterintuitive, decriminalized all drugs. They did not arrest them if you were possessing drugs and drugs. They would dissuade you. They would talk to you about what's going on in life. They would help you. They would do it in a 10-year period. This is in Forbes magazine. It's in Global Research. It's in Global Intelligence magazine. It's Time Newsweek. Everybody has a story about Portugal. America, 10 years out, they reduced all drug usage. I said all drug usage, teen drug use down over 50%. Adult use drug down over 50%. They had removed all the stigmatism to it. And instead of incarcerating people, what's wrong with you, and dragging you off and throwing you in jail and destroying your life and making sure you can never have a good, decent living, because you know what happened. And that is the crime. The crime of the prohibition of cannabis is the worst thing about it is getting caught with it. I mean, you can destroy your life. They stopped doing all that. They stopped doing it. The studies are still coming out. There was a recent study done in 2015 on what happened in Portugal after 15 years. After 15 years, all the statistics still hold true. If you would understand that everywhere you liberalize, especially in the cannabis plant, you have a lot less societal problems. So we're moving that. The world's not going to collapse. Governor Hickman around in California. Everybody look up the Portugal miracle. I'm asking you to look that up, get that data, and see what happened there.